Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. This time we'll be taking a look at a new future. I'm sorry this video is as delayed as it is. My life being as busy as it is right now, it becomes increasingly difficult to find the time to work on anything. This is a video I was not planning to make in the first place, but I ended up making it anyway because hearing some hot takes when it comes onto this banner was grating, to say the least. Now with that said, for the legendary banner, do not expect it to be on time for the end of the banner, so I'll just say this. Legendary Crumb in the end of the player is good. Is she amazing? No, there's no way for her to loop Aether, therefore she's a lot worse than a lot of tank which people would use. However, the main thing here is that she's going to be a absolute pest to kill in the end of the AI. Let me put it this way. If you don't kill, you get doubled most likely. And if you get doubled, you get killed. Welcome to this Corrin. And the problem is, don't come to me telling me, oh, dragon killers take care of her. No, they don't. No, they absolutely do not. Case in point, 70 attack with a dragon killer does not kill. You will die, however, because you'll take a Draconic Aura to the face from that minus 30% damage she inflicts, and that minus 30% makes the absolute difference between killing and not killing. But yeah, that's the gist of it. She's going to be Chrome 2.0, basically, for most people that are actually at a high enough level in AA. Honestly, at this point, I do think AR is looking more and more as a joke compared to AA. Just the sheer fact that AR, you only really need 2 team, 1 per season, with some units that can be taken out and in, makes it a lot more viable than, oh, I need to have literally like 7 counters for Crom, 7 for Corrin, which, I mean, there are counters. In fact, let me just put it this way, just so I sounds as slimy as they are. Okay. What is the next Resplendent we're getting, which was revealed just before Corrin's revealed? Alm. Alm is a brave dragon killer. It almost feels like Corrin can just block 1 hit of the 2, therefore that makes Alm able to kill her consistently. What a weird... that must be a coincidence. Absolutely, right? What about the Forma unit? What are they? Oh, one of them has Witchy 1, which is a hard counter to her special, because it sets it back to nothing. Must also be totally a coincidence that we can just get her and get, you know, a straight counter to Corrin. Yeah, it must definitely be the case. What about the other packs? Oh yeah, there's a pack that you can literally buy Mia out of. I don't know if it's still up, but it was up for like 2 or 3 days after the banner was dropped. Where you could buy Mia twice. That's a lot of coincidence. Mia dropping into your game basically 3 times if you spend hard enough, on top of having a hard counter as in the Resplendent, is just not right. There's just so much about this that doesn't feel okay. And they are clearly capitalizing on the fact that Corrin is being released to bring counters to her that you have to spend. If you want to deal well in AA, you have to spend like $100. Great. I love this. What a great fucking system this is. Anyway, rant aside, let's talk about the video now. I did say, you know, as an off-comment in another video, how a lot of people are considering Dimitri as the best pick, while I consider him the worst. And it's time to put my money where my mouth is and explain why. Keep in mind, by the way, before we start, while I do say Dimitri is the worst, that does not mean that, oh, he is utter garbage and utterly unredeemable Oh my god, what a worthless character this is. No, that's not what I'm saying. But Edelgard is a kid that works well with itself. Claude certainly has a broken-ass weapon when it comes down to tanking. If there's no archer on the enemy team, you can actually bring the pain. And Lysithea is literally the strongest nuke in the game. Go figure why these three are better than Dimitri, a unit that's barely better than a 4-star focus we got from literally the banner before this one. But yeah, let's talk about Dimitri, shall we? So, Dimitri. Dimitri. First off, random comment that does not have to fit with Dimitri per se, but who the hell gives a fuck about joint own attack? Joint own skill should not even be like on characters anymore. Just put joint drive attack. Literally no reason to use joint own over joint drive. Period. No reason at all. Joint drive will not get fucked by LoL. Joint drive does only one less attack and also buff the user for that, for attack, which means you can combo this with an actual buff. There's no reason to use joint own ever, except for scoring, and that's it. I don't get it. That skill is so pointless. It was good a year ago, not anymore. Why is there still a character coming out with it? That's like if you gave Seal Attack instead of Blue Lion Rule. Like, bruh. There's no point in this. Anyway, so when it comes down to Moon Gravitas, a lot of people have been saying, oh, it's literally like Mistletoe. Owen's weapon, by the way, just gonna precise this because there's a bunch of Mistletoe in this game at this point. On top of DC, that must be amazing. No, because the reason why Owen's weapon worked is the fact that it had cooldown -1, which means you were able to have a 3 cooldown, put it as a 2 cooldown, proc it, get hit, and then proc again. 3 cooldowns do so much more than 2 cooldowns. 2 cooldowns, you're limited to Ruptured Sky, Moonbow, and obviously Noontime. Oh my god. And no, Glimmer is not really very much a good choice when it comes down to Dimitri. Glimmer is a very much... And obviously this is something I've said before, but for those who don't know, this is how I think about Glimmer. It's a win more card, okay? The only time I can see it have a purpose is against Corrin, the newest one. But the problem with that is you still need the charges. So, yeah, that's kind of awkward, to say the least. But, yeah. It's not very good. You're basically limiting yourself to 2 cooldown if you want to use it as effectively as you can. There is one way to abuse this weapon, but you have to give up the B slot. That's kind of the problem with Dimitri. If you really want to make full use of him, you either will have to ditch the pref or the B skill. Having both of them together doesn't really work, because in a lot of cases, B slots, especially for inventories, are extremely vital. And, well, Blue Lion Rule can work, but if you really want to abuse it and make it work, you require to switch your weapon to a better one to accommodate this pref skill. It is very much a way to make the B skill work. Also, I'll point this out, but if foe initiates combat, unit makes a guaranteed follow-up attack. Nobody cares. A lot of people have been pointing this out as if it's super good and allows him to be like so much more threatening. It really isn't, because at the end of the day, he only has 36 speed, okay? In a lot of cases, if you are dealing with if you are trying to tank an AR, which is where most people are planning to use him, if you're planning to tank an AR, you have to deal with impact skill a lot, okay? And this B skill is not a no follow-up, okay? And besides, no follow-up would not help him either. See, here's the big problem. You're reliant on speed, despite the fact that you have a guaranteed follow-up, because then Sturdy Impact pops in, That, which by the way, Sturdy Impact also screws the fact that, you know, you need to have more depth in the enemy for the 40%. Obviously, for like very frail targets, that's not that much of a help for them. But if you're talking about certain targets that are very, very mixed bulk oriented, this, especially like Bramimon, for example, this is not great. Not to mention, Bramimon just destroys Dimitri. It doesn't like, see, here's the thing, right? Blue Lion will give you a follow-up against Bramimon, but you still have to take 2 hits before you get to your follow-up. You're dead by then, because your res is that trash. Bramimon is a character that does way too much damage to you. There's no way for you to combo into Brave Lucina against him. You just basically die. There's no way around it. Even if you had the 40% damage reduction, Bramimon would just kill you through it. That's just how disgusting this is. And that does happen in a good chunk of time. It's just very messy. This B skill doesn't really work. In a lot of cases also, if the unit is more frail, so you know, you'll be able to get your follow-up, better hope you one-shot. Because if you don't one-shot, what ends up happening is that you don't get a follow-up because your speed is average. Which means in a lot of cases, a lot of Sturdy Impact users tend to have good speed. Because, you know, Quick Riposte is a thing, and this is a way to deal against it. Or Vengeful Fighter, or any automatic follow-ups. And Dimitri is, sadly, definitely one of the units that gets screwed by this. 36 speed is okay. But unless you invest heavily into it, which, unless we get attack speed unity, I guess, might be very awkward for him to work. If he had joint drive speed, this would not be a problem, but since he doesn't have that in his kit, it's already kind of awkward. But obviously, if you do give him that, that might alleviate some of the issue. Still, it gets to a point where you have to one-shot, and since you're locked to 2 cooldowns, you don't really get that much more damage out of them. Especially if you're in AR, where you'll most likely be stuck with Noontime, because if you don't have Noontime, your HP will just not be good enough at that point. You will just basically get whittled down to death. Also, Aether, not very much an option either, which, obviously, that's a great situation to be in. So Sustain is kind of a no-no, and that makes him kind of not great in AR, if not just straight up hot garbage. It is a sad thing to say, but that's kind of what it is. His low-ass res is just that awful. And there are ways to go around it, especially with his pref, but at that point you want to get rid of your B skill for a better one, if that's what you're going for. Now, let's talk about comparison, shall we? I did mention Geese, like as an often comment, but I do really want you to pay attention to the difference between Dimitri and Geese. Dimitri has 3 more attack, same speed, 7 more def, but 7 less res. Yeah, having better mixed bulk with Geese allows him to be a much better Spurn unit. Obviously, you know, Dimitri has Blue Lion rule, so he doesn't really need Spurn, but at the end of the day, if you have the speed to double naturally, you know, that's kind of the problem with Blue Lion. You need the speed to double naturally in case of impact users, but you also need to have the def to make the damage reduction do anything. So you have to invest into 2 stats, and then you also have your res that's trash. It's like, I have to fix my res, but my def needs to also be good. Also, my speed is kind of needing to be good for Blue Lion to work. What the nanny? It's just so awkward. Geese is a lot more concise, and obviously, Flowing Lance. Probably most people here are going to be like, what about if you use Flowing Lance on Dimitri? Yeah, this is exactly what I'm getting to. Flowing Lance with Blue Lion Rule is absolutely amazing and makes Blue Lion work, while also being able to fix his res somewhat with a Refine. Obviously, you know, that does help a fair bit, and I do think Dimitri is overall better than Geese. But the thing is, how much? Geese is a character that will cost you about 500, 600 orbs to plus 10, okay? Dimitri is a character that right now will cost you about 1800, 1600 orbs. And if you are smart, which, you know, you just did up to the Spark, and, you know, you chose Dimitri, your free unit is Dimitri, and you maybe have gotten a Dimitri on the way, then just completely stop on the banner, because that's what you should be doing. You should be waiting for the anniversary, because on the anniversary there's going to be a Hero Fest for Choose Your Legend. And Hero Fest is obviously better than his banner in terms of rate. So obviously at that point it would be a bit cheaper. Still, I do think it would be on average about 900 orbs. So it's still more expensive than Geese. And again, Geese is just cheap. And still, his stat line works really well. So it's much easier to work with when it comes down to Geese overall than it is with Dimitri, especially at low merges. At low merges, Geese, I'm gonna be honest, Geese is kind of better, just because on low merges, Dimitri's res is... The hell are you going to do with that? And just... Your def will be very awkward if you have to deal with high merge unit. Your speed will just be not good enough in a lot of cases. If you have to deal with no follow-up, you're basically just dead on arrival. It's just a mess more than anything. And it's just kind of a shame because, for people who don't know, Dimitri is my favorite. Yet, that's what I'm basically saying. Also, for those who are pointing out as a fact that makes Dimitri so much better than he actually is, which is the fact that he won the PM1 poll, I actually agree with Dimitri winning that poll. You know why? Because from a free-to-play standpoint, Dimitri brings something new that no other unit brought into the game for guides. Except, you know, Camus. Camus kind of does a very similar shtick, but Dimitri does it way better because while he still has shit res, he actually has a B skill to make up for it. And that can definitely help in a lot of maps. Also, armor killers are still too prevalent, even in PvE content, so Edelgard is definitely awkward to use in a lot of cases. Not to mention, Lance infantry units, I mean, like, Geese is one of the best one, Chris is like the best one. If you're a free-to-play player, Dimitri's kind of your only pick. Whereas, if you're talking about axe armors, I mean, you have Dorcas, you have Edelgard again. So, you already have choices. Lysithea and Claude, I mean... When it comes down to archers, you can just use Gem Key and he will do a very similar job. And Claude, honestly, on low merges, probably will not do well in Abyssals. In general, heal tanks don't do that great in Abyssal. It's all about high damage intensity. And obviously, Claude is much less prone to be that, but more like, you know, being a heal tank, so that doesn't work. Lysithea is amazing in Abyssal. I genuinely think that would definitely help. But our best set is sadly not an option for most players as it requires special spiral. So yeah, as a result, Dimitri kind of is one of the best options if you have been the second best. But yeah, overall Geese is cheaper. He is slightly worse than Dimitri, but he is a hell of a lot cheaper. As for the other two options, when it comes on to Ephraim, he gets a guaranteed follow-up, yes, very similar to what Dimitri gets with his B skill. However, it's on both phase, as long as he has more attack than the enemy and discounts in combat buffs. So it's very easy to work with. And if you have the speed to block the enemy's follow-up, that makes him incredibly annoying to deal with. Because at this point, right, even as you see now, he has 39 speed with a buff 45. If you're dealing with someone with 49 speed, he can't do follow-ups, but you will be able to do follow-ups. And that number can raise very easily with low attack speed and so on and so forth. Ephraim is very annoying to deal with, though I do think the main thing to take away here is the fact that Ephraim scores better, wasn't a Hero Fest earlier, and overall is kind of more annoying to deal with, and also, if you're just talking about a one-off, Ephraim is just so much better than Dimitri, it's not even close. Better res makes it very easy for him to work with. If you just compare the stats side by side, Ephraim has 3 more attack, 2 less speed, 2 less def. But like 4 more res, and keep in mind you can go res plus if you think that res is lacking. Whereas Dimitri is at 27, which is about as high as it can be strained at. So yeah, as a result, I do think Ephraim is slightly better overall. And then you have female Chris. I don't think I have to explain why female Chris is here. She absolutely floors Dimitri when it comes down to stats. Because her weapon does -5 attack, speed, def, but also gets rid of penalties. Yes, this is a very annoying weapon, but it also has cooldown -1, which obviously allows her to be a heal tank with Aether and Special Spiral, while also being incredibly bulky. Let's compare the stats side by side just so you get an idea. You have 27 res on Dimitri, you have 40 on Chris because of her weapon. There's a 13 res difference here. And as far as def is concerned, Dimitri only has 4 more def over her. As far as speed is concerned, there's a 10 speed difference. Obviously, Chris is a fantastic Spurn user as well, so if the idea of Blue Lion Rule is interesting to you, you can just use Spurn. And, I mean, you only have one stat to focus in now instead of def and speed with Dimitri, so that's already a huge help. And when it comes down to attack, you still have 3 more attack. The only thing you can really bring up as a point for Dimitri is the fact that since he has a DC weapon, his A slot is completely empty. But even then, even if he has like Mirror Stance 3, for example, yes, he ends up having like 3 more attack than Chris, and yes, the res gap is lessened, but there's still a 7 res gap. Jesus, it's really like annoying at this point. And I said this before when Chris was released. I sure am glad that one of the worst actually the worst avatar in the series is also the one that's treated the best, but then we have Corrin because Maeda really likes to beat his meat on Corrin. But I mean, that's kind of a given at this point. Maeda has done that quite a few times already, sadly enough. So, yeah, I mean, I already said this, but Chris is going to be the golden standard for Lance Infantry because they decided to make a sword unit into a lance, basically, with obviously what I'm referring to being male male Chris being switched to a lance for female, but keeping the very same weapon, which should not have happened. But oh well. I mean, penalty negation also, that's something Dimitri doesn't really get. Yes, Unity skill are a thing, but that's only covering 2 stats, and his res is still as shit as ever. So, yeah, and that can be debuffed even further. Wahoo. So yeah, overall, Chris absolutely slams Dimitri. Duo Ephraim is slightly better, scores better also, and Geese is very similar. And that's the worst part about it. The fact that Geese is this similar and able to do very similar job to what Dimitri can. Honestly, it's wow. Because the thing is, if you go Spurn on Geese, you just have to focus on speed, right? If you go Blue Lion Rule on Dimitri, you can't focus on speed, you have to focus on speed and def. So, it's just more clunky for no reason. Oh well, that's kinda just how it is, I suppose. Anyway, moving on to builds. So these are the Moon Gravitas sets. So on the right, I'm gonna start on the right obviously. You basically have a set that's just pure solo skills in tandem with Ignis. The idea obviously is so that with Brave Lucina support, or actually no, you don't need it for this in particular. You can just have Moon Gravitas, which is basically taking advantage of the fact that you get 2 charges. You basically can get hit and proc Ignis. You cannot do this with sustain, and that's really the biggest problem. Cooldown -1 is just better for sets like this. It just is. But, I mean, I guess that was too much. It's kind of a shame. And I've said this in a comment on one of my latest video, how cooldown -1 is just better than this effect. This effect would have been amazing on Shannon, by the way, and you'll see why with the 5th set. Yeah, spoiler alert, this 5. The thing is, when you are talking about a unit like this, without like a cooldown -1, it's very awkward to work with. And also, it basically works as a cooldown -1 weapon until you hit twice to charge a special, which, or rather, you get hit twice to charge a special, which, yeah. Let me just put it this way, right? Cooldown -1. You have 4 cooldown now. You hit, get hit, hit. You're at 1 charge left, right? Now you have Dimitri, starting at 5. 1 gets 2 for being hit, then hits again. Oh, he's down to 1 as well. Uh-oh. Spaghetti-o. And then you also realize the fact that, you know, cooldown -1 can stack cooldown -1 special spiral to basically have a cooldown -3. So you can then combo this into Brave Lucina, who also still exists, so you can just get the last 2 charge from there. Whereas, you get 2 charge from your weapon, great, you just don't need Brave Lucina to pull that off. Wahoo! Like, any DC weapon with Brave Lucina support can do this. Except you also get 2 charge for attacking when Brave Lucina is helping you. And you can also have a cooldown -1 weapon. And there will not be a slaying set on any of these. You want to know why? Because if I run slaying without blue rule, blue lion rule, you are basically at a point, okay? You are basically at a point where Geese would do exactly the same, but probably better because he has better mix bulk. So yeah, as far as the Aether Special Spiral set is concerned, Geese does it better. That's just kind of a given. I don't know what to say, that's kind of just how it is. But yeah, set on the right, you have 66 attack, Joint Drive attack pushes that to 70, attack rest solo to 77, so you have 77 attack, 52 speed thanks to speed rest solo. As far as your def is concerned, you are sitting at 50 with nothing buffing it. I just decided to not use it. On lower merges, you cannot do this. You will need to have at least something like a buffer helping you, because otherwise your def is just going to be sitting at like 46, which is a lot more awkward to work with. As far as res is concerned, though, you are basically looking at 45 res, which is pretty decent. So you have 50 def, 45 res, and for anyone with 40 def and less, you'll be basically doing a 40% damage reduction while still having 77-52 offensively, which is very solid. I will say, though, while it is solid, you don't have sustain with this set, and that's kind of the problem with Moon Gravitas in general. There's no way to basically get cooldown -1 with this, so you get to in a very weird and precarious situation where getting to 3 cooldown is very difficult, and 5 cooldown as well. I mean, at best, you could use Times Pulse and Soul, so you can basically Times Pulse, get you 1 charge, and then get hit and proc Soul. But the problem is it works 1 time, so if you get hit by another unit on enemy phase, you're just kind of losing HP overall, because you will not be able to proc like anything on that fight. You'll just get hit back, and then maybe proc, but if you proc then, you get in this odd situation where the enemy is probably already almost dead, so you heal nothing. It's just very clunky to work with. As for the set on the left, this is the only set that will feature Moon Gravitas and Blue Lion Rule, which is also why I said on the right, considering Blue Lion Rule, but this is really just for the set on the left. This set still hits 50 def, 45 res, so it does work. It's just on low merges, might not work so good, and if you have to deal with low def, you're in a very awkward position, especially at low merges. But yeah, kind of the problem with this. Hello Noontime, don't really have much of a choice. You can use Ruptured Sky as well if what you want is damage, and you don't care about having no sustain. That's kind of the problem with Dimitri. You kind of have to choose between sustain or actually doing damage. Also know that if you have to deal with anything that has cooldown, that basically screws over your charging, yeah, that's also a problem. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of a given, but I figured I'd point it out at the very least. Anyway, second set of builds. Oh, I guess I did do a slaying set. Oh yeah, it's a slaying set, but not Aether. Okay, yeah. Set on the right is for damage. Keep in mind, slaying lance here is purely so you can do a bit more damage. You lose on having an A slot, so your res will take a beating as a result. You still have 50 def and 42 res, the reason being you have a refine right now. And as far as damage is concerned, you have 68 attack as well as 52 speed. Bonfire will proc, so meaning you get hit, you proc Bonfire, but you'll also have a bit of survivability thanks to Blue Lion Rule. So that's pretty solid. On the left, you have the main set, really. This is definitely the main set I'd recommend for most people. Ditch that goddamn Moon Gravitas. It is not helping. Here you can also use Noontime if you feel like it. It will overall do very similarly to this set before. When it comes on to healing, here you're basically looking at 73 attack and 52 speed, which is very solid. As far as the bulk is concerned, you have 42, which again, very logical, until you realize, oh, it's Flowing Lance, so you have really 55 def and 47 res. So the main thing here, and this is why Flowing Lance works so well, is that it inflicts a lull effect on the enemy, meaning they cannot buff their defense to counter Blue Lion Rule. This is the reason why Flowing Lance is so good here. Because essentially, what you do is, basically you'll have 55 def, because they lose 5 def from Flowing Lance. But, if they have a +6 def, it might as well be -11 defense. Flowing Lance being a lull just makes Blue Lion so much more consistent, and it also makes up for the fact that you lose an A slot when it comes down to damage. You still get basically 3 more attack over Moon Gravitas. Obviously, having an A slot to increase your attack is better overall, but it's not necessary. So yeah, it's overall the main set I would definitely suggest. Noontime/Ignis are definitely some of the better options. Or you can live dangerously and use Aether, but at that point that's more of a roulette when it comes down to how much you're going to get healed. Obviously this is with Brave Lucina support. If you have Brave Lucina, obviously, one of the things I would suggest is to run double drive res, or join drive res and drive res, so you can have 50 defense and 49 res, or, because of Flowing Lance, 55 def and 54 res. Oh, also, I forgot the lance itself, so it's more like 58 def, 57 res, which makes you kind of a, brick wall at that point. While you still have 55 speed thanks to Brave Lucina, and your attack is basically looking at 76 attack. So you're basically a brick wall, you'll take very little damage, and yeah, it's basically the best way to go about it, in my opinion. It does make him very solid. It's just kind of a shame that you have to use Flowing Lens for him to even work. I really wish his pref was better than it was, but alas, it just kind of isn't. If instead of getting an extra charge when you get hit, you had something like a low effect, similar to what Flowing Lens does, that would have helped him so much, because that pref would have been actually really solid to function on top of Blue Lion Rule. But personally, what I think happened here is just the fact that Dimitri got off of his pref. In 2 years, he's gonna have the full pref when it's gonna be refined. But until then, you kind of have to do with alpha pref, so that this is the result. Wahoo. As for stat 3, this is why I said Shannon would have used that effect a lot better. If you have Wrath and Time's Pulse at the start of your turn and you are missing every single charges, if you're under 75% charges, you will just simply be able to have Ruptured Sky ready right away. The reason why Moon Gravitas works here is that you'll be able to proc, get hit, get 2 charge from it, and then proc again. This is just really solid overall, because with Wrath you get 10 true damage, and with Attack Rest Solo, you are basically at 73 attack, right? So you'll have 73 attack, proccing on top of 10 true damage, Ruptured Sky twice. Obviously, this is mostly meant to work in a similar way to how you would use Iroh. The problem with this, however, is that you can only use it to this extent once a turn. It's very similar to what makes Barst work as a unit, which is, you know, Time's Pulse Wrath twice to charge a bonfire. You proc once, then you back the hell out, because otherwise you're going to you're mostly going to hurt yourself, more so than it's going to help you. So yeah, very straightforward set, but it's nonetheless a very good one, and you still hit 50 defense on top of 45 res, so it works pretty well in your favor. This set can definitely work on lower merges as well. Just keep in mind your speed might be a bit iffy overall, but that's about it. Anyway, moving on to Edelgard, 37 minutes in. Don't worry guys, Dimitri is probably the biggest one I wanted to talk about just because of how awkward the set is. From now on, every set kind of work in itself, almost to a fault. You'll see what I mean once we get to the 2 best units. Because yes, Edelgard is the second worst on the banner. It's really funny how the number 2 of the banner, the number 2 of Choose Your Legend were treated just so much better overall. Here you have Distant Ward and Joint Drive Res. The idea is just, hey dude, we want to make sure that you have equal def and res, more or less. So that's what we'll do, but Distant Ward is such a terrible skill to use. Bruh, do I want my fucking armored unit to be like, this is a bow unit, I'll sit there and do nothing? No! This is why Distant Ward and Close Ward are considered well, not Close Ward, that's not out, and it would actually be good on Bowie, but this is why Distant Ward is considered trash. Nobody wants it, everyone replaces it, because it's not a good A slot. And it's not like Close Foil, where it's like, depending on the situation, one might be better than the other. Distant Ward is just so awful in general. A lot of the range unit tend to be bows. If you're a bow unit, the hell are you going to do against this? It's not helping you. Drain Drive Res is also one of the worst Drain Drives, so there's that. Not much more to say here. As far as Black Eagle is concerned, really, it has 2 effects, but the main one that matters is the fact that you get an extra follow-up regardless of the moment, as long as your HP is over 25%. This works really well because the weapon has the same condition, but the other thing that it does is on the second hit you take, the damage will be reduced by 80%, which can be very solid, and obviously by that I mean the follow-up part. If you have a brave weapon, the first 2 hit will do normal damage, and then the last 2 hit will do a much less amounts of damage. And also I'll point this out, but my Life and Death Jamke, yeah, Life and Death, destroys Dimitri in 1 round, even in CC, with barely any damage taken. And that's not with an AoE set, that's with Luna, meaning he gets to have the full protection on top of attack def unity of his B slot, and it's just not enough. Go figure, but Edelgard can actually tank it. It's almost like that set works better. The reason why she is considered worse than the other 2 is just because armor killers are everywhere. And her low speed makes it so that as long as you can take 1 hit, she will die in a lot of cases. Though obviously your second hit will be heavily reduced. But if you have, like, say, a red armor smasher, that's all you need to kill her. There's not that much difficulty in dealing with her. If you have to deal with duo Hector, for example, yikes. If you have to deal with Idun, yikes. And those 2 units are semi-common at this point, so that's kind of awkward. And that's kind of some of the problems that she runs into. Also, keep in mind, if she doesn't, if you know the enemy doesn't have, if the enemy has a guard-like effect, she just cannot proc anything, unless she has a lot of health of like Raphael / Veloria, which I mean, if that's the case, you're in a decent position for 1 fight, and that's it. Wahoo! Honestly, overall, though, the set works really well, and the weapon basically gets rid of what makes her an armored unit, which is shit movement. Please don't come around and tell me, oh, but it has a condition to work. Please, even a 10-year-old can tell that the 25% HP or higher is not a condition at this point, especially when you don't take recoil for it. It's just not. It also has cooldown -1, which, oh my god, does Dimitri wish he had that. And also inflicts 6 attack and death penalty on the enemy. So effectively, you have 51 base attack, and as far as bulk is concerned, you have 49-41. So yeah, this is a very, very, very solid effect, and also you have aerobatics. In some ways, you can be considered a horse unit, but armored. If you have a unit within 2 space of you, or like at the edge of that 2 space, you basically can move 3 square with her. And yeah, that's just really good in general, isn't it? It's funny because at this point it's basically like the JoJo meme where you have Dio going, I reject my humanity, JoJo, but it's I reject my armored status, JoJo. Because she basically doesn't care. She just has 2 movement permanently for the most part. So, you know, as you do. It's just kind of what it is. As far as comparison goes, well, I mean, there's 2. And, I mean, they all do things very different. They have all basically the same stat line. I mean, the stat speaks for themselves. But Surtur, especially if you decided to invest in a Surtur, because he was on a 2-man banner, and 2-man banners at insane rate, which is why they only did like 1 or 2 of them, I believe 2. I mean, there's no point in investing in Brave Edelgard, personally. I do think Surtur does a good chunk of what Edelgard does, and in some cases he does things better because his true damage is just free. It's just, you exist, you take 20 damage for existing. Which in some ways can also, with Wary Fighter, allow him to survive Crom 1 hit, depending on the set, of course. God forbid you end up with the 93 attack Crom I ended up having to deal with in AA that like literally last week. But if it's just like the typical close counter set, you can just basically face tank that Crom with DC and just On your turn, he takes 20 damage and finish him off. Just that easy. This is one of the best part about Surtur. There's a lot he can do with it. Surtur's Menace is also very obnoxious for in the end of the AI. But really, it's mostly because of how he works in the end of the player. That said, he is still armored, and he still is prone to the same problems as many others. But still, it's fairly solid. As far as the unit on the right, you have Raging Storm, Gale Force 3 times, I guess. But you cannot really double with it, whereas Edelgard is just double for days, which is something the other two does not have. So, you know, that's already a good part for you. And again, this is kind of like what I meant earlier by Dimitri having a lot of competition. If you're in comparison, right, and you have two units that overall are better than you, and one that is cheaper by a long shot than you, and does very similar to you, it's really hard for me to just say, yeah, good unit, let's go, dude. It's really not. However, if you're like in a situation like this where you have 3 units with a similar stat line, but they all do something different. Like Surtur is 2 damage, Edelgard is Gale Force for days, and then you have Edelgard, Brave Edelgard, I guess I should like make the difference between the two. Wu is basically double for days, heavy reduction on the second hit, and still the enemy still lose -6 attack and defense. However, Legendary Edelgard does block follow-up at the very least, which is not something Edelgard does, Brave Edelgard does, but she gets pretty much similar result with the -80%. In fact, it sometimes helps her, because what ends up happening is she hits, she procs, she gets hit, she procs, she gets hit. Or if you are using Bonfire, you hit, get hit, proc Bonfire. Or, you know, if you have Brave Lysithea, get hit, proc Bonfire, get hit, proc Bonfire. It's very potent in some situation, but it can be very awkward in AA, obviously. Because, spoiler alert, Legendary Crumb destroys Brave Edelgard because she gets doubled, but mostly because her HP is not that high, which means even if you have like 50 HP, if on the first hit you take 42 damage, and then the second hit you take 8, you still die. And Edelgard, unless you have Bonfire with Brave Lysithea support, will never be able to one-shot Crom. And even if you kill Crom, you are now below 25%. So your entire kit is now void. You now have a 16 might slaying weapon with no effect. Your beast lot is dead. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. As far as builds are concerned, there's really only 2 to show. And set on the right is basically taking the advantage of the fact that you have 2 to 3 movement because of aerobatics to abuse Gale Force, to just teleport in, do Bold Fighter, Gale Force. Though keep in mind this is very awkward because 77 attack is typically will one-shot. I forgot to remove Armored Stride on the set on the right. Damn it. Just remove that and put like Join Drive Res if you want to have a bit more bulk. What was the other one? Not Join Drive Attack, because that will screw you over. It's... I guess Attack Smoke can work, because you can then debuff and then go back in to kill another unit. It really is up to you. Mainly Join Drive Res works because it's already in the base kit, and it helps even up the bulk. As for solos, I know some people might be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Which, also, I just kind of realized solos are a thing, yeah. So I guess Join Drive Res is not that helpful, but the idea here is if you use Edelgard as a frontliner, mostly, so aerobatics doesn't come into play too much, Speed Res solo might be better. However, if you plan on using her with aerobatics in mind, switch that to a bond. Obviously, right? That said, if you are trying to use her as an AR tank, obviously if there's no armor killer, she's going to be great there. You will want to use Bonfire. Okay, you will want to use Bonfire, and you will want to use Speed Res Solo. Now, why the hell Speed Res Solo? Are you drugged up, Jay? What is this? It's mostly because it's the only effect that gives you res on both phases. That doesn't really have a condition where you have to be like next to someone. Because being next to someone basically invites a few things that you don't want to happen, which are sudden panic, or versa. But also, if Edelgard fails to kill because someone had sturdy impact, which screws over Black Eagle rule, then they typically will get dense and snipe the unit in the back. However, if you do a choke point with Edelgard, and you keep her alone, that will not be a problem. So this is why solo skills are a bit better. Obviously, once attack res solo becomes a thing for the set on the left, it is going to be the way to go. And for the set on the right, which will make Joint Drive Res work, Def Res Solo is definitely going to be the best one, just to be a bit more bulky overall. Yeah. If you want to go with Gale Force, you can also decide to use Fortress Res, which will even both bulk but also lower your attack. This can be a good thing, because your attack is already exceedingly high, to a point where you will typically one-shot instead of hit, get hit, hit, proc Gale Force, which is kind of a problem, right? So, you know, Fortress Res is an option as a result. Those sets are very straightforward, but then again, what is an armored unit that isn't straightforward? You know, just saying. So yeah, that's all I had to say about Edelgard. Let's move on to Claude. So, Claude. Claude. What the hell is this set? The only skill that's worth keeping is the C skill. Wahoo! Now, you might be wondering why I say this. It's very simple. Fury will basically make you take recoil at the end of combat, and the heal does not happen at the end of combat. So basically what ends up happening is it shortens your max HP to 34, which means as long as the enemy can do 34 damage, you don't get to proc anything because you're dead. That's a bad thing. Wow, shocking, right? So obviously to make up for it, it's better to have something like, well, first off, close counter to really abuse the bow, but if you don't have that, to have anything that gives you a bit of bulk while also giving you damage. Attack Def Solo is a great example of that. Now, attack speed rate. I've already spoke about it briefly on the Tempestral GHB tier list update. Attack speed rate is amazing. That said, in a few cases, if your speed is already amazing, you want attack def range, so keep that in mind. And Claude is no exception, shocking literally no one with his base 45 speed due to his weapon. The condition is very easy to work with, and, well, that just makes it work very easily. Essentially, get hit with Brave Lucina support, Proc Luna / Bonfire, or Iceberg, depending, and then finish it off with a hit right after. That's basically Claude's playstyle. Keep in mind, impact will screw you over, yada yada yada, what a surprise. I don't think I have to explain this to you at this point. But yes, overall, as long as you can one-shot them, if they have an impact, you should be fine. Essentially, the idea is, you take heavy damage, but you heal back 50% of your health afterwards, so you can just keep your HP up as a result. Keep in mind, AoEs will screw you over, yet again, what a surprise. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about this. It's very straightforward, but it's very effective. And as far as comparison goes, again, just like Edelgard, there's not much of a comparison here. Takumi was the best offensive archer in the entire game, and I'm not surprised if you did not actually remember that he existed. Kind of a seasonal. But yeah, he is an absolutely amazing bow unit, but as you can see here, Claude basically has the same offense. If you go attack plus, you'll have better offense overall than Takumi. However, if you go def plus, it improves your survivability, which makes Wind Parsha more consistent. So there's that. So it's kind of a give and take. Personally, I do think def plus is better. As far as Loki is concerned, some go like, oh, that's a tanky bow. Loki is kind of better than Claude in terms of bulk, but it really isn't. Because while yes, you can have a refine to improve your bulk, let's say you take a res refine, you have 33-35. When Parsha pushes Claude to 36-35, you're tying him in res, but you're behind on defense. If you take def, then you're behind in res by a large amount while not being that much ahead in defense. Essentially, Claude is absolutely better in every way than Spring Loki. Also, for the few people who think they're smart thinking about Spendthrift Bow, which makes her overall bulkier than Claude, yes, you are correct. But then you lose cooldown -1 and you lose access to stronger specials as a result. So you're not really winning anything at the end of the day, and you still don't have the sustain that Wind Parsha provides. So yeah, and also your speed is going to be behind by like 8. Yeah. And even with Spendthrift Bow, you're behind in attack. Did I drive the point home enough at this point? Yeah, Claude is definitely extremely solid as a result. And as far as builds are concerned, there's really only one, which is this one. Keep in mind, so there's a few things to note here. Iode's Shield, this is only if you want to use him heavily. If you don't want to use him heavily, Fierce Stance will typically do you better, or Sturdy Stance if you're going for this. Essentially, the idea is just to have sustain, but also damage. Here is Attack Plus, which is kind of why I said Def Plus and Attack Plus are both good. Attack Plus lets you ensure that you kill more consistently, which obviously, you know, that helps. Here you're sitting on 72 attack. If you have Fierce Stance, it's 78 attack. Keep in mind you still have 55 speed, so doubling is not exactly a concern either. So yeah, very solid overall. It basically means he's going to have sustain very easily, he's going to double the enemy very easily, and yeah, it's overall very good. Now, Mystic Boost. There is an alternative to this, but it's typically only if you plan on using him for non-tanking purposes or just multi-phase, which is Desperation. Now you might be asking, why the hell would you run Desperation when you have a bow healing you? Are you insane? And well, yes I am, but that's beyond the point. The idea is that you're using Moonbow instead of Luna here. The idea is if your HP is low enough to be in Desperation range, taking a hit while initiating on the enemy, not exactly an option anymore, is it? However, if you have Desperation, you can hit and then proc, so you can then proc Wind Parsha to heal yourself back up. It's basically a bootleg Mystic Boost, in a way. But it does work fairly well, and it's fairly accessible. This is the best B slot, in my opinion, outside of Mystic Boost. Vantage will work against you in a lot of ways, because you will just not get the charge in time, and as a result, you might just not get a special, and even if you get to attack, right? Even if you get to attack, and potentially, you know, what am I even saying? Even if you get to attack safely in one shot, it's not really consistent to not have Desperation. In general, Desperation will just help you get your HP back up to full, if needed. Oh yeah, it was Vantage I was talking about. Wow, I love having a blank like this. Essentially, what I was trying to say is Vantage, even if you get to attack first, it will screw you over when it comes down to charges. If you have to deal with something like, say, Sturdy Impact, you'll proc Vantage, hit once, And no special, you are left there with like 10 HP left and easy picking for literally anyone. So yeah, Vantage will typically work against you as a result, which is kind of a bad thing. But yeah, very straightforward unit, but very solid one nonetheless. Now for Lysithea, the absolute best nuke in the game, and before we start, I'm going to put this way. Everything but the weapon has to be replaced. It's like they had no idea what they were building. My lord. But yes, this weapon is insane. So essentially, the effective against dead content, nobody cares, okay? It's just calves. Nobody cares. However, at the start of combat, if foe's HP is over 75%, grants attack and speed +6. You also have a +3 speed from the weapon. So you effectively have a base 48 speed, and with, obviously, you know, a buff that's 54 speed, which makes attack speed push and low speed res like... Bruh, do you have enough speed yet? Especially when you realize the second part of the goddamn weapon, which just makes this look even more silly. So, the second part of the weapon is if your HP is less than full, then if unit initiates combat, you get a desperation effect, but you also get a guaranteed follow-up. I don't know why they gave a guaranteed follow-up to a unit with like 54 base speed, but I mean, it's literally the reason why she is as good as she is. By the way, Legendary Corrin, she is a fantastic counter to her. All you have to do is basically get below full HP, which I would say if you are using attack speed push, might want to get rid of that and use Fury instead. Reason being, you will always have the stats with Fury. Push, if you fight too many times or you take too much damage in that one fight that you do without desperation, attack speed push will be worthless. Or attack def push for that matter, but that's a question for another time. So yeah, as a result, Fury might be better. You'll still get the recoil. Basically, hitting once is all you need for Dark Spike to go off. But yeah, essentially, this makes you a absolute nuke. If you have to deal with Corrin, your first hit will be, you know, reduced, but your second hit won't. And because you're in desperation, you get to use your second hit right away. And this, even with base kit with low speed res and like Fury 3, will be more or less consistent in dealing with her. So that's very, very, very good. So yeah, that weapon is insane. But to put this in perspective, let me show you the one set, right? But first, comparison, obviously. So here's something I don't understand. Why did when Lysithea, base Lysithea came out, people were like, oh my god, so busted? When she really wasn't. She's amazing in AR defense, but outside of AR defense, her weapon is extremely clunky to work with. Which, oh my god, why? Which, by the way, if you're talking about AR defense, I do think base Lysithea is better than Brave Lysithea, because she's at full power right away, thanks to Time's Pulse. And there's nothing the enemy can really do against it. Once it's their turn, she just get that charge, and you have to deal with her skill, which is very useful. But yes, for some reason, base Lysithea was heralded as like this unstoppable force, whereas Brave Lysithea was like a fart in the wind, apparently. Or at least that's how it felt to me, because nobody spoke about Lysithea, and I don't get it. I really do not get it. So, as far as offense is concerned, it looks like Lysithea has a better offense, but you'll see what makes Brave Lysithea more consistent. By a lot. By a lot. Keep in mind, Lysithea hits 75 attack thanks to the 6 attack if spec is ready, and then 4 attack and speed from Swiss Pharaoh that is in the weapon. So you have 75 attack, whereas Lysithea has 65. Brave Lysithea. So, you know, there's that, right? Bulk is very similar, and when it comes down to speed, base Lysithea is a bit iffy in that, so sometimes you might want to go speed plus instead of attack plus. But yeah, as far as E1 is concerned, E1 is a character that's very heavily slept on. Keep in mind, just look at the stat line, then realize this. A buff, low attack speed, sturdy impact. Okay? For long sustained fight, without relying on desperation, which can make him a very solid mixed phaser, a 1 is going to be better than both of these. That's just kind of a given. Because with sturdy impact and low attack speed, you're basically looking at 45 defense and 44 res, and with a buff that's 51 def and 50 res. Yes, you heard that right. And with low attack speed, you also have 51 speed. And because of sturdy impact and a buff and Fox Dome, you are sitting at 71 attack. This is before the seal. This is before Joint Drive attack. Honestly, a 1 is extremely solid. And, yeah, a lot of people, again, sleep on him. Really wish that was not the case. But, yeah. Now, for the crux of it all, Brave Lysithea will effectively be able to have Desperation, which frees the B slot. Can't really explain what makes her better than both of these when it comes down to nuking, or literally any unit in this game, really. Until I show the builds, but essentially keep in mind, having Desperation in your weapon frees up your B slot, which means you can have LOL and Desperation at the same time. You can have Desperation and Special Spiral at the same time, which basically opens a lot of things. But let's talk about those things. Special Spiral in question. There is really only one build here. Because, I mean, what's the point of any other set? Here you can see Attack Def Push. This is good if you want her to be a mixed phaser for early on in the fight, or if you want her to take a hit before, you know, her HP gets too low. That said, keep in mind, the second you're below 25%, this might actually bite your ass. Now, there is a way to go around this, which is Sturdy Impact, of course. If you use Sturdy Impact, this will not be a problem, but you'll be a player phase only unit. Both of which have their own good points, but really it comes down to preference. If you have Sturdy Impact, you'll have 41 def and 38 res, which is a lot bulkier than people think Lysithea can be. And speed is already at 58 speed, so I think that's already good enough as is. You be the judge, I guess. As far as attack is concerned, with Attack Def Push, you will be at 71. Dark Spikes pushes that to 77, and Joint Drive Attack to 81. Sturdy Impact will give you 80 attack instead. In both cases, Dragon Fang does 40 damage. Now, Special Spiral lowers the charge by 2, so you effectively have 2 charge left to get on Dragon Fang. Since you have Desperation in your weapon, you get to hit with Heavy Blade and then proc with Heavy Blade. Yeah, I don't think I have to explain why that's good. You basically get a 40 damage proc every single fight you're in. And it's not like a situation like Time Spol's Wrath, where it's a once per turn effect. Ho ho ho, no! You can just have 3 Dancer and snipe 3 unit with her. Free of charge. All you have to do is get in the Desperation range. The idea of Sturdy Impact or Attack Def Push is to safely get into that range. The problem with Sturdy Impact is you have no recoil, so if the enemy does not hit you back, Attack Def Push will typically do you better, unless it's a prolonged map like Abyssal and so on and so forth. So yeah. Also keep in mind, and this is why I said this, Fury is also a fantastic option, for a very obvious reason. Though keep in mind, if you're planning on using Fury for it instead of Sturdy Impact, you will want Def Plus instead of Res Plus, because that evens up your bulk. So combo into Fury, it's a no-brainer, it works really well. You're also going to be sitting on 62 speed, which is extremely overkill, but whatever. And attack-wise, I mean, you're losing to attack, but you still have 78 attack. Very, very solid. This is what makes her the best nuke in the game. Obviously, there is going to be one little problem, which is the fact that if you have to deal with, well, like Witchy Wand or anything that inflicts guard, or just, you know, like stance 3 skills, that will get fucked a little, but you still have 78 plus attack, my dude. 78, 80, or 81, depending on the A slot attack. In a lot of cases, that's good enough. Okay? That's good enough. You might, like, if you have to deal with, say, Legendary Edelgard, guaranteed follow-up will instantly kill her, basically. Brave Edelgard will take massive damage on the first hit, which makes the second hit a child's play to finish her off, if the first hit did not finish her off in the first place. And Legendary Edelgard cannot block your follow-up, which is extremely useful. This is very useful in a lot of cases. Anything that blocks follow-up, she'll just ignore it, basically. 62 speed is that good for it. That's just kind of how it is. So, yeah. That makes her extremely annoying. And keep in mind the fact that all of this is very cheap. Even if you don't have Special Spiral, you can use this set, right? With, say, Fury 3. And then in the B slot, keep low speed res for just more damage from the res. That's all you need. Fury 3. I mean, with Heavy Blade, of course, to make sure that you hit proc Moonbow or hit proc Ruptured Sky, whatever skill you're using. Also, keep in mind she's going to be a nightmare for Sophis. Sophis literally cannot do anything. The second that she's under full HP, basically, I hit twice, you can't do shit. You don't get to proc Sirius between my hits because Desperation. So, yeah. She just checks so many units at this point. It is insane. Very, 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 very good nuke. And in general, if you're a relatively new player, she's probably going to be the one that is going to help you the most. And this is kind of where it becomes a case of, if you're doing AR, you typically will want Brave Claude. If you are more of an all-rounder player, like I am, Lysithea is basically the best pick. But yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone have already picked their unit, but that's basically my opinion on the matter, which is why I said that Claude and Lysithea are basically, like, depending on your account, should be either one of your choice. But yeah. So yeah, in conclusion, this is my review of the Brave Heroes. Hopefully this was not too, like I know I've been kind of rough on the Dimitri part because I wanted to be very thorough and explain my position when it comes down to the unit. And yeah, I'm sorry for those who really like Dimitri and really wanted him to be good. Honestly, I feel just as bad as you do. Because basically what that means is they intentionally made him bad so they can make a very good legendary version of him, which will cost about twice as much to plus 10. Joy! I sure love this. If you can't tell how much sarcasm is dripping out of my voice for saying that, I mean, yikes. I do think Brave Edelgard is overall slightly better than Legendary Edelgard at least, though. Because Legendary Edelgard is a, I hope I one-shot character, which is not exactly the best type of character, whereas Brave Edelgard is more consistent. And again, getting hit bonfire is extremely disgusting in terms of damage. The problem with that is you don't have any sustain, but I mean, that's kind of a given, sadly. But, yeah, I think I've said everything I wanted to say about this. Hopefully this was enlightening, and yeah, hopefully I didn't sound too tired. Today was a killer, and it's 5 AM, as you can tell. Bad habits die hard, I guess. I'm going to be able to sleep a grand total of maybe 2 hours tonight. But at least the video's out, and I can now start working on the legendary banner. This was also the biggest video I had to make. Technically, the legendary banner might be bigger, depending. So, quite glad that this is over. But yeah, with that said, I'll be seeing you all next time. Have a nice rest of the day, everyone. See ya.